I've never met this man, but for years, I watched him work. The man was equal parts stealth bomber and Indiana Jones boulder on the football field as a running back, measuring angles, changing speeds, dodging defenders with the capability of barreling over opponents while striding down the field with a smile on his face. One of the few players in the NFL history to escape the Madden curse, gracing the cover in 2001 and not suffering a season-ending injury as a result. From The Ohio State, coming to a stage near you, Eddie George, it's an honor to have you on the Cabbie Presents podcast.
Man, thanks for having me, but I love the introduction, man.
Well, listen, I'm a big fan, and I know you get that a lot, and I can get into my fandom later. I don't want to weird you out right from the jump because it's the first time we're meeting, but I've been a fan for a long time. I know we were just speaking about basketball before we started. How much do you root for Paul George because he shares your last name?
Oh, actually, when he was balling at Indiana, I made a joke to my son, said, yeah, that's our cousin.
Did they believe it?
Yeah, but I said, no, he really isn't. But, you know, it's very rare to find a George other than like Jeff George.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
Actually played in Indianapolis, Eddie George, and, of course, Paul George. There's not a lot of Georges, but the last name George is in professional sports. No. So it's not
but
common.
you have to root for that guy.
Well, you got to root for him. So I'm hoping that he comes to Philadelphia.
What is it about Philly? Like, I mean, you guys are actively recruiting. I mean, not.
Well,
LeBron, they're tossing out there. You know, Kawhi might be a free agent, or might be traded.
But LeBron is not a good fit for them.
Why?
Because Ben Simmons is the similar play. He is a younger version of LeBron. He needs the ball in his hands. He's not a position guy that's going to spot up and shoot a jumper. He needs the ball in his hand to drive. He needs to develop an outside shot. He's not a role player. LeBron, he's the facilitator. He is like LeBron. He facilitates, and he makes plays happen.
LeBron can play in the post, though. Not like
you think LeBron is going to play in the post?
No, not like in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Not that version, but like high post and just surveying the court. The guy is deadly on the post, and obviously from the perimeter as well. Because as soon as the double team comes,
anywhere he's deadly.
You're correct. You're totally right. Okay, when you played football in the 90s, you were one of the first athletes that I knew. And maybe Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had done this in the 70s, which I'm unaware of because it's before my time. But you used yoga as a method of either of meditation or healing of the body or stretching, or was it just you were just tired of being in locker rooms with 50 other dudes and you needed to be in a smaller space with like 20 or 30 women?
Well, I took private lessons, so it was less about. It was
you didn't get the best of both worlds.
Well, not then. You know, it was really for my game. It was to become more flexible. I would become stronger in my core. Because as football players, you know, we focus on the legs, explosion, and bench press. But back then, we didn't focus on our core, and I didn't realize just how weak my core was. So it was mainly because of that and injury prevention to stretch my body and put it in situations where it was very difficult to breathe in tough spots and through edges. That's what I kind of learned earlier on.
It's hard
helped.
It's hard to visualize you having a weak core because back in the day I'd watch those Adidas commercials and more specifically the one with you're in the pool and you look like a friggin' a Michelangelo statue, bro. Like you were cut from marble or some form of like granite or something like that. Like and there was the one at the end of the commercial, it's like, oh, they're getting tired and the linemen's those eyes.
Yeah, you did your homework.
I'm telling you, I've been a fan for a while.
Yeah.
So it's weird to hear that. However, I mean it must have helped you because you were one of the most durable players of your era and playing like the position where you absorb like the most pain.
Yeah, most punishment. You deliver the most punishment. Yeah, but that's why I took yoga.
Your most famous rival, the Tennessee Titans of the '90s, were the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, yeah.
But and obviously Ray Lewis was the face of that franchise. Were there players that you had underrated or like unknown rivalries with, like maybe a Junior Seau or a Jeremiah Trotter or a Zach Thomas? Like it wasn't quite as splashy as Ray Lewis, but there was still some.
It was the entire Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I mean that rivalry was vicious for a while because we were all in the same conference at one point in time. It was the old AFC Central, and it was us, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. And we were all clumped together. So that was a very difficult conference to navigate through. And in Pittsburgh, they had our number for a while, and it was from man to man. You had you had Chad Brown, you had Levon Kirkland. Oh God, Casey Hampton. I mean, just the linebackers, Joey Porter, young Joey Porter.
Right.
You had thumping safeties that love to get physical with backs. So that entire defense, for a while, I couldn't crack 100 yards against them at all, let alone 50.
Did you ever in your career?
Oh yeah, I got them. Eventually I did, but it wasn't a lot because it was a telephone booth, and the linebackers were my size or a little bit bigger across the board. So yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense of that era was nothing to play with.
Speaking about Ray Lewis, and he's famous for like his pregame speeches and his outsized energy. Was there who was the guy in the Tennessee Titans locker room that made similar speeches?
Probably me.
That was you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were you okay? Can you give us like a couple of lines?
Oh,
you're
man.
an actor now, so you're able to emote in a different way.
Well, the thing is acting. You have to be truthful in imaginary circumstances.
Okay.
And that is not something that you can just see. If you do it like the way you're asking me to do it, it comes across as fake, and it won't. It's bad. It's like the Jameis Winston incident. You know,
right,
where it's premeditated. Yeah, that's premeditated, and you thought about it and you scripted. You can't do that. When you deliver speeches, if you deliver one, it's such in the moment. It's not something that you say, I'm going to say this. It's right then and there. It's organic and it's heartfelt. You can't just deliver a speech. Maybe Ray had written his speeches down. I mean, I don't know. But for me personally, that's guys will read through BS.
Right.
They'll read through it.
Okay, well, Eddie, as you have been an actor for a few years now, you have the ability to access parts of your imagination where perhaps on the football field that part of your brain was not necessary. We're here now. Can you give me a little sliver of how perhaps you might motivate some of your brethren to go out and battle on that football field?
I can't do that. Okay. I can't.
I'm trying hard.
Because there's no one in here but me, you, and the cameraman. Who am I motivating? I mean, I get what you're saying.
Motivating me in life, my friend.
I get what you're saying, but you know, that was so long ago, man, and I can't come across corny. I just can't.
What if
I'm telling you, that's what would come across. I can't do that. I can't.
How about this for role play? I am your son.
Well, how about this? How about you give me a motivational speech?
Listen, Eddie,
No.
I've never run for 10,000 yards in the NFL.
It doesn't matter.
I'm not an all-pro.
You are a connoisseur of great players. You've studied this. You've listened to Ray. You probably listened to different guys. Give me one of your favorite speeches that you've heard.
I see how you're turning.
No, I'm not turning. I'm asking you. I want you to demonstrate for me how you would.
What if I go? Then will you go?
Oh no.
What? Listen, I will just revert back to my coach, high school coach, Mr. Brown, and he once said to the linebackers. He used to say things like, "You guys are the chariots of justice. I want you to open up the gates and bring hell with you." Like some things like that. He had metaphors like that. He was a comic book guy.
Okay.
So that's how he would inspire us. But okay.
But do you see how difficult that is to? You're talking about your old coach inspiring you. So I've asked you to demonstrate how you would do it. Do you see how awkward that seems a little? I'm just saying.
Okay, but I see your point. Yeah, I see your point, Eddie. But I don't have the reps, my friend. I don't. You have.
Right.
You've probably done hundreds of pregame, whether it's at the Ohio State or with Tennessee.
I have, and that's what I'm saying. Though it will not resonate the same. It will not come across the same unless you're missing the essential elements, my friend. You're missing the crowd. You're missing the level, the stakes of the game. You're missing the opponent. You're missing the smell of the grass. You're missing all of that. Comes into play when you're giving one of those speeches. You're missing the noise. You're missing all of it. So that being said, I can't give you there. I don't know what the situation is, the time of season, what's on the line, the time of year,
right?
The time of day, the scene is not set. And don't create a scene. You're not going to create a scene because that's not going to happen.
I like how you just gave me the Heisman right there. Like before you start activating some part of your imagination, let's just put a pause on that. Okay, so let me quickly transition to the stage. As you've made that transition a few years ago, you play the slick lawyer Billy Flynn in the musical Chicago, which is here in Toronto for a limited engagement, June 12th to June 17th. For the audition, when you auditioned was it in Nashville the first time? Or in Tennessee the first time? Did you have to sing the song Razzle Dazzle? And did you properly know how to hit that splendiferous part of that song?
Give them a show that's so splendiferous. Row after row will grow vociferous.
Splendiferous?
Isn't there like a listen, I don't know the song, but when I was watching the clip.
How does it go? Give them the old razzle dazzle. Give them an act with lots of flash in it, and their reaction will be passionate. Give them the old hocus pocus, bead and feather. How can they see with sequence in your eyes? I'm trying to get this one difference. Okay, that's it. Row after row will grow vociferous. Yeah, grow vociferous.
Grow vociferous.
Yeah. Give them the old. Oh God, I'm trying to go. Give them the old double whammy. Yeah, dizzy. I skipped over it. Sorry about that. Go up the steps. And then, hold on. I got to go into my mind. And row after row. Yeah. It's row after row will grow vociferous.
Okay.
That's it. But
it wasn't splendid. Maybe that was for the movie, not the actual.
There is the stage is different from the movie. So, and that's the mistake I made when I went out for Chicago was I studied and listened to the version Richard Gere did, and I did everything that he did. And he would go, how can they hear the truth above the roar, right? And I did that on the New York stage, and the music conductor said, oh, no. You don't say roar, you'll scare everybody. Just say roar, because it's quite different than the movie, you know. Yeah. So it was fun getting that tidbit and to know what key I had to sing in and all that. So that was a lot of fun.
At what point did you seek some kind of validation from your wife Taj, as far as all the music? Yeah. Can we work together, or when do you feel comfortable enough to be like, okay, you're going to sing in front of her? Because obviously she's the vocalist.
She's the vocalist in the family, and she's very critical. And
okay.
No
kid gloves.
No, she takes off the gloves with me, and she was like, "Oh, you sound terrible," or "You're flat coming in on this," or if you want to hit your high notes, smile and use your hands, come from your hips. When you're singing, going for your high notes, think down. I mean, things, just little nuances to help me get confidence in the technique. And I have a voice coach, the same coach that she put me on. So anything and everything that she tells me to do, I do.
Well, listen, Tony Parker a long time ago told me, and I've never forgot this, said, happy wife, happy life.
Yes, that's the God honest truth. You keep your wife happy, you're living a great life. When she's upset, the household is upside down, and that's not good.
You're built for big moments. And did you use before you go on the stage, do you use the same self-talk that you did when you go on the field?
That's a great question. I do a similar warm-up, not as physical, but I try to be warm, and I try to have a good lather of sweat before I go on stage, so I'm not coming on cold. When I put on my outfit, on the costume, I become that character immediately. So I do everything in my dressing room as Billy Finn would on stage. So my conversation, where am I coming from, and where am I going? So it's just, the stage is just another room that I'm going to in my visceral world. So it's that's my process. So, much like on the football field, I had to transform into something completely different than myself, because you to play a running back in that era, in that time, you had to have a killer instinct about you. You had to approach the game differently and realize that for the next 60 minutes is unadulterated warfare. No disrespect to the military and all of that, but in your mind, you have to think that because you have to impose your will and your physical prowess onto an opposing player and to try to come out on top. And that's how you had to think.
So when you're working yourself up into a lather, are you doing those like vocal exercises? Ha 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 ha.
Absolutely.
Are you doing?
Absolutely.
So Eddie George is doing those.
Yeah, I'm doing.
Are you in a circle with your other actors, or are you just like in your?
No, I have it on my phone. I have my vocal warm up on my phone. And I'll pull up that lesson, and I'll do it. My headsets. I'll just do it out loud.
I know this
I guess you're gonna ask me to do that, right?
No, see, can you shut that mouth? You're like, I was so hyped with the pregame speeches. I mean, this is the guy that fired up the troops.
Listen, man. Listen. Pregame. Let me tell you something about pregame speeches. They can go great. They can go great, or they can go horribly wrong.
Really?
Oh yes.
How so?
Either you nail it or you don't. There is no in between.
How do you know that you've nailed it?
You've nailed it when other guys are locked in. And there's dead silence. You see heads nodding, and guys are feeling it. Or you just a blank stare, and there's a look of like, "What are you talking about?" and snickers, and that's when it can go horribly wrong. There is no in between. You got to either feel it or you don't. You just can't come up with something off the top of your mind and go, because that's when it can go really bad. Pre-game speeches are tricky in that way. Sometimes it's better not to say anything. Just let the emotion just carry you through. You know what I'm saying? Again, if you rehearse it and you script it out, it's going to go bad. I'm telling you, it's not going to go well at all.
Okay, speaking of going bad, have you had a moment where when you're on stage,
oh yes,
and where the audience is just like this, they're watching the entire spectacle, but for you, you're so aware of like what you're doing and then the people around you. But has it gone pretty bad for you where you're like,
oh yeah,
that
I forgot my lines my first time. I'll never forget it. I made up something on the spot, and the ensemble knew that I was off key, and but the audience didn't. But you can sense that I was lost, and I was so fearful that I just made something up and just walked off the stage and just left everybody else out there.
Wait, were you supposed to leave the stage at that moment?
No, I was not. I was supposed to stay out there, and they were just like, okay. They were all laughing. After we got off stage, they laughed and kind of patted me on the back and said, "Oh, congratulations! You passed the first test. You improvised. You saved yourself."
I've often had that moment on dates with women, my friend, where I'm just like, "This is going horribly wrong. I need to."
Are you rehearsing what you say?
What, on dates? No.
Do you script?
No.
The topics you're going to cover?
It's fully organic, but there are times I've had to pull the pin and just like.
Give me an example, like how did that happen?
Oh, when it's gone horribly wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you one of the. I've never admitted this before. I was out on a beach. It was nighttime. We're looking at the moon, and it was a little bit cold. And then we were like our faces were close or whatever. And then I leaned in for. I said something about the moon and the reflection in the moment. It was. So I leaned in, for a kiss, and then my nose was running.
Oh God.
And then my nose ran onto her face.
Oh, jeez. Oh, that's awful.
And then I had to.
Did she feel it?
Yeah, because I had to wipe it off her face, Eddie. And then I was like, it's time to go. It's time to go.
Or you could listen on stage. There's no mistakes.
There aren't.
That's an opportunity.
For what? A learning experience?
No. You could have flipped that. You could have flipped it.
I could have flipped that?
Yeah, you could have.
What could I have done?
You say, you could have made up something on the spot like, hey, this is what you do to me. You make my nerves you make my nerves shake, and this is what happens. I apologize for getting a little snot on you. Let me get that off. And you feel better? That's all. I'm sorry for getting that on you.
Eddie, I need.
There's some other things I like to get on you, but there's other ways you could have turned that into a positive. So, a little snot could have led to,
And it didn't.
But you panicked.
Oh, did I ever?
And that's what you can't do. You can't panic.
In the moment.
You can't panic.
Eddie, I need you as a life coach. I know this is our first time meeting. I hope that I get to meet you again because this conversation was so short. It wasn't long enough for the things that I need to absorb from you, sir, in your life experience.
God, man, I enjoyed this. I mean, I'm really having a lot of fun talking to you. I could do this all day.
Can you?
Yes.
Can you stay? All right, okay, well, listen. For people in Toronto, you can catch it Chicago. Again, it's June 12th to June 17th at the Ed Mervish Theater. It's a limited run. I will be there. I'm not sure where, but I'll be there.
Bring your girl too. You still dating her, by the way?
No, that girl, no. That fell apart quickly. I don't even think I saw her again after that night. That was a football game, and I was like, -9 with a couple of fumbles.
Here's your opportunity to make it up to her. You have her come to the show and say, "Listen."
No, that girl, no. But I'm with a girl now. Like I would rather bring my. Oh, you're saying to make amends with the original.
Make amends. I mean, something to think about. Listen,
thank you.
Here's a couple tickets. My boy Eddie is in the show. Come through. Come backstage. Have a chance to throw up the jazz hands. I promise you, no snot will be flying around this time.
It's just going to be spittle.
Exactly.
From all the singing and stuff. Thank you very much for being here. It's wonderful to spend some time with you. And again, I know you do multiple things out there in the world, but if it comes to mentoring and life coaching, sir, as well as all the business stuff, please let me know when you're going to activate that part of your brain, and I will be there front and center looking like this, learning from one of the greats.
Will do, my man. Hey, I appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much.
All right.